Yeah.
It feels like every game is getting canceled this week. But lucky for us, one of the biggest games is still scheduled to go on. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, ready to talk some Big Ten football for our game of the week between number 13 Wisconsin and the Michigan Wolverines up at the Big House in Ann Arbor. And you know, guys, up until recently, within maybe the last day or so, this game was up in the air. This game didn't seem like it was going to be played. But luckily, Wisconsin started to get their COVID cases under control. A lot of the guys that were quarantined and that kind of kicked off this COVID outbreak at Wisconsin a few weeks ago started to get healthy, started to clear their tests. And as of right now, it appears that Wisconsin and Michigan will face off on Saturday. Again, something that we didn't think was going to happen just a few days ago. This is going to be Wisconsin's first game back, their first game in 22 days. Remember, they took down Illinois in their season opener near the end of October. The COVID outbreak began, and they had to cancel a handful of games. Two of the next games, I think one against Nebraska and the other against Purdue, and now they're finally getting to play the Wolverines. And this is a Michigan team that is very disappointing. So you've got a Wisconsin team that's beat up because they're not fully healthy. You've got a Michigan team that, yes, is beat up due to injuries, but one that's been one of the most disappointing teams in the country this year. The Wolverines sit at 1-2. They're below 500 through 3 games for the first time since 2008. Big win against Michigan in the season, Minnesota in the season opener, and then the bad loss to Michigan State, and then another bad loss to Indiana, losing to the Hoosiers by 17 points. When you look at these games, guys, the series, the history behind the Badgers and the Wolverines, it should be noted that the home team has won 4 straight games. These two teams have alternated victories depending on who is the home team. So that is a sign of encouragement, a positive sign in the midst of all this negativity and all this disappointment when you look at Michigan going into this game. The Badgers took down Michigan last year 35-14 behind 203 yards from Jonathan Taylor. Luckily, he is gone. If you're a Michigan fan, he is not around anymore. I think most of the Big Ten is happy about that. So we are here to break down this entire game, guys. We are going to break down the offense, the defense, the keys to the game, and who we have winning this Big Ten showdown, one that is much bigger for Wisconsin than it is for Michigan. So we're going to break all of that down for you here in 1 second. Real quick, though. Wisconsin enters this game, despite coming on the road, despite having not played in 22 days, Wisconsin enters the game as 4-point favorites. Over a field goal favorite on the road at the Big House. That spread, of course, guys, brought to you by BetNow.eu. Check out their link down in the description below. That is the site we use for all of our games. Whether we're betting college football, NFL, basketball, whatever it is, that's where we go, betnow.eu. And if you use our link down there, you use our promo code GRIDIRON, you get a 100% sign-up bonus and that $1,000 cash sign-up bonus. I'm not lying. It's not a scam. Go check it out down in the description below. I can't think of anything better and any offer better than what BetNow is offering to you guys and offering to us right now in the middle of this wild college football season. So Wisconsin, 4-point favorites. Why are they 4-point favorites? Well, a major reason they could be favorites in this game is because of Graham Mertz. Now, his availability, I guess I would say, is still up in the air going into Saturday. But I am inclined to believe that Paul Chryst is going to play the new star phenom quarterback for the Wisconsin Badgers. When you look at this offense for Wisconsin, it's tough. It's tough to even break them down, analyze them, because we've only seen them play in one game. A 45-7 victory over Illinois, and that's not saying much. That's not saying much. We haven't seen them play in over 3 weeks. But Graham Mertz, in that game against the Fighting Illini, went 20 for 21. 1 incompletion for 248 yards and 5 touchdowns. That was his collegiate debut. And he put up those type of numbers in a Big Ten game. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if it was Illinois. I don't care if it was Western Carolina. Those are ridiculous stats. Ridiculous stats from the star quarterback. He's going to be a problem in the Big Ten for a long, long time. He's going to be a problem on Saturday night if he's available to play. He has cleared all of his tests, and he will officially be cleared on Friday. He is practicing this week, has been practicing this week, which leads me to believe that he will be under center on Saturday. A lot of those passes and touchdowns, when they faced off against Illinois, MERTZ threw to the star tight end in Jake Ferguson, one of the best tight ends, I think, in the Big Ten this season. 7 receptions and 3 touchdowns against Illinois for Ferguson. So 60% of MERTZ's touchdowns went to Ferguson, kind of his top receiver as of right now. And Wisconsin, as we know, always usually poses a fairly balanced offense. They now have a quarterback. Jack Cohn wasn't bad, but he was never great. Alex Hornibrook was not very good at all. MERTZ has maybe given Wisconsin the missing piece, the piece they've been missing to finally win a Big Ten championship and maybe break through to the college football playoff. The Badgers averaging, or really put up 248 passing yards and 182 rushing yards against Illinois in that game against the Fighting Illini. We can't say they're averaging anything because, again, they've only played one game. You look at Michigan and their offense. We can talk a little bit more in depth about Michigan. We've seen them play more games. We've seen them play 3. I think that's a good eye test. I think that's a good way to look at this team. You can kind of really see what they're made of, and some would say they're not made of much. The offense, though, for Michigan, for years under Jim Harbaugh, was the missing piece. That was the missing piece. The defense was usually pretty good. In the offense, they never had much stability. They never had a capable quarterback to get them over the hump and to win the big games. I'm not saying Joe Milton's that guy, but through 3 games, this offense is playing better than we expected. 31.3 points per game and 430 yards per game for the Wolverines this season. And Joe Milton, the junior quarterback who got the starting job going into this season, he's thrown for 869 yards and 4 touchdowns this year, along with just 2 interceptions. So for a guy that really had taken very little collegiate snaps leading up to this season, playing 3 games, all of them against Big Ten opponents, all of them big Big Ten opponents. But Indiana, now a top 10 team. Michigan State, a rivalry game, obviously. And then Minnesota on the road in week 1. That's a tough game and matchup as well. So Milton didn't have the opportunity to ease into his collegiate career, didn't have the opportunity to ease into the starting job like he would have under a normal season, under normal circumstances. So these stats, I think, to me, are relatively impressive. They're averaging 289.7 passing yards per game. So Milton, again, putting up solid numbers week in and week out. The defense has been their downfall. We'll touch on them in a second. Another downfall for Michigan last week against Indiana was their lack of a rushing attack. We praised Michigan on their run game when we previewed Indiana-Michigan. Praised them on that. And we said if Indiana wants to win, they've got to shut down the Wolverines' rushing attack. If they don't win at all. And the Hoosiers, I guess, listened to us because Tom Allen's squad rose to the occasion. They held the Wolverines to 13 rushing yards on just 18 attempts. And that's what some would say. They didn't run the ball enough. Maybe so. But again, 13 rushing yards over the course of the entire game, that's not good. It's ridiculous. And that Indiana run defense wasn't that good going into that game to begin with. So a lot of numbers there that you want to look at here. Joe Milton is the key for this Michigan offense. I know they have a solid running back, Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins. I know they've got some solid running backs there. But right now, I think it's Joe Milton or bust. He's the guy that's going to have to lead them and maybe pick up this Wolverine squad. One where you do question, where's their motivation? They're not going to win the Big Ten East. They're not playoff contenders. They're going to a middle-tier bowl game, if that. Might be a lower-tier bowl game, depending how the rest of the season pans out. So are they going to be motivated? Are they going to want to play? They're beat up. They're down on their luck. What's going to happen here on Saturday night? Defensively, let's look at that for both teams. Usually a strength for both teams. We'll start with Wisconsin. Again, usually giving preference here to the away teams. But Wisconsin, this is their strength. I know we talk so highly of Graham Mertz, and in the past we've always talked so highly of the rushing game. Jonathan Taylor, for many years, being the best, one of the best in the business. We know Wisconsin always has a very strong offensive line as well. When you look at their defense this year, what's impressed me the most is their front seven. It is absolutely their front seven. I think, what you would expect from a hard-nosed, in-the-trenches type team that Paul Chryst has built up in Madison. The front seven, to me, very, very physical. Very, very physical. One that could very well outmatch Michigan in this game. Because in Wisconsin's lone game this season against Illinois, they racked up 3 sacks and 6 tackles for a loss. And again, take that as you will. It was just Illinois. That's the only thing we have to base Wisconsin off of this season. That one performance. That one performance. And we're going to run with it. You look at Michigan, they allowed 3 sacks to Indiana just last week. Michigan gave up 3 sacks to Indiana just last week after giving up just 2 sacks in their first 2 games combined. So something to watch out for there. This Wisconsin pass rush could be a problem for a Michigan offensive line that's a little bit beat up. And this Wisconsin secondary, I'd praise the front seven. Secondary not too shabby either. They only allowed 87 passing yards to Brandon Peters and the Fighting Illini. Again, not the best quarterback they're going to face. Joe Milton's better than Brandon Peters. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. But for a full 60 minutes, to allow less than 100 passing yards, it's pretty dang good. Michigan, defensively, they're beat up. They just lost their star defensive end in AIDAN Hutchinson. Had to get ankle surgery. So that's a big loss already. Kwity Paye, he got a little beat up in that loss against Indiana. His status right now to me is unknown. I assume he will be back. Nothing too serious from what I've heard, but obviously he might not be 100%. So you lose your star defensive end in Hutchinson. You lose Kwity Paye. And you've got a defense now that is not typical of a Michigan football team. So, we've seen in recent years dominant, top 20, sometimes top 10 Michigan defenses. They're nowhere near that this year. Wolverines allowing 29.7 points per game through their 3 games this year. They're allowing 411.7 total yards per game this year. And here is the number that I'm circling the most. I know we break down the stats. You might be tired of hearing them. But the number that I'm looking at the most is that Michigan, through 3 games, has allowed 287.3 passing yards per game. That is bad news. Very, very bad news if, in fact, Graham Mertz is under center on Saturday night. The Wolverines were torched by Rocky Lombardi at Michigan State. They were torched by Michael Penix at Indiana. And I have no doubt in my mind that if Mertz plays, he will torch this Michigan secondary, because I don't see any way how they're going to improve that drastically within 1 week in a game that really to them means nothing other than trying to get themselves back to 500 and make this season somewhat respectable. So Michigan has got to step up in that secondary, because they've been torched by 2 decent quarterbacks. But Rocky Lombardi is the one to me that sticks out the most. Is probably the most inexcusable. So what is the key to the game for both teams? Or I should say keys to the game for both teams. Again, Wisconsin is favored. The Badgers are favored. And I know we've repeated his name so much, but if Mertz does not play, the spread will drop. And, the tide could go in Michigan's favor here. Honestly, Mertz will make that big of a difference, because we know Jack Cohn can't play. We know if Mertz is out, he can't play. So Wisconsin would be down their 3rd or 4th string quarterback, and you do question, okay, if I'm Michigan, yeah, let's make Wisconsin pass the ball. Our secondary has been garbage all year long, but their 3rd or 4th option, they're not going to be able to do much against us. So Mertz is the key in this game. That's not our first key though. For Wisconsin, the first thing they need to do is they've got to start fast. You got to come out hot. You have been resting for 22 days. 3 weeks off. Haven't played a game since October, I think 23rd it was. Haven't played a game since October 23rd, nearly a month. You can't come out sluggish against a Michigan team that has more practice than you, that has played in more games than you, even though they have been losses. So Wisconsin, come out hot, come out slinging. If I've got Graham Mertz, I am throwing the ball immediately. I'm taking shots immediately. Let's get out there. Let's get loose. It's on the road. Yeah, you've got a lot to lose. Wisconsin, they can still win the Big Ten West, and maybe they are a dark horse for the playoff, even though I think with the 2 games that were canceled and the limited games left, they probably can't get there unless, maybe they beat Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. But they've got to come out fast. Have to come out fast in this game. You don't want to come out sluggish, even though you haven't played, like I said, in over 3 weeks. Another thing that Wisconsin needs to do is they need to stop the run game. They need to stop the run game. If there was one bad takeaway from that Illinois game, is that Wisconsin's rushing defense wasn't that great. They allowed, I think, a little over 130 yards in that game. And they allowed Brandon Peters to move a little too much in that game. Peters' mobility was the lone bright spot for Illinois in that game against the Badgers. So you have to stop the run game. You have to contain Joe Milton. He rushed for over 50 yards in each of the first two games, was unable to do so last week against Indiana. But over 50 yards against Minnesota, over 50 yards against Michigan State. You can't allow him to do that here at home. I think that Michigan's going to come up with a game plan where Milton is a little bit more mobile. They didn't try to do that much last week in Bloomington. So I think Joe Milton tries to be a little more mobile, tries to move the ball a little bit more with his feet. Wisconsin can't allow that. Wisconsin has to bottle up the running backs that Michigan has. All of them. Very, very good. So really, the lone key here is force Joe Milton to win the game through the air. He threw 2 interceptions last weekend against Indiana. If you can get 2 more, or even just 1 more, I think Wisconsin has a very good chance to win this game. Turnover battles, those are key, especially when you're on the road. Michigan, what are their keys? First one is make every possession count. That sounds stupid. Of course you want to make every possession count. You're never going to take a possession and not try to do anything with it. Listen, Wisconsin's one of the best teams in the country when it comes to time of possession. Wisconsin beat Illinois 45-7 and held the ball for 43 minutes and 28 seconds. 43 minutes and 28 seconds. They held the ball for nearly 75% of the game against the Fighting Illini. I know that's just one game, but look at the time of possession marks last year. Wisconsin was just as good, up there for one of the best in the country. They're a ground and pound team. They're going to throw the ball more with MERTZ, but MERTZ doesn't throw in completions. MERTZ is accurate. He's precise, and they have a great offensive line to protect him. They've got a great running game as well. So Wisconsin's going to milk the clock. They're going to long, methodical drives that more than likely will result in points every single time. Michigan, if your defense can't stop that, when your offense gets the ball, you've got to go answer. Even if you only get 3 out of it, that's fine, but you've got to make every possession count. You can't allow for stupid turnovers. You can't allow for red zone trips and coming up empty. You've got to score on every possession that you get. And if you don't, you better hope that your defense gets a stop against Wisconsin. You better hope they do it relatively quickly, not after Wisconsin's held the ball for over 7 minutes. So do that, and then also take care of Joe Milton. So we want Wisconsin to force Joe Milton to win the game through the air. Michigan has to take care of Joe Milton so we can even have a chance to try to do that. Because Joe Milton had 2 turnovers last week. 2 turnovers. He had 0 turnovers in the first 2 games. He was sacked 3 times last week. He was sacked twice in the first 2 games. Joe Milton showed us last week that when he's under pressure, when he's under duress, when he doesn't have as much time in the pocket, he's going to make bad decisions. And that's to be expected from a quarterback that has rarely seen the field. Remember, Indiana was just his 3rd ever start. 3rd ever start. So these are 2 young quarterbacks here, relatively speaking. You're going to see some mistakes made. MERTZ having not played in so long, Milton's still learning the ropes. But if he's under pressure from this Wisconsin front 7, it's going to be a very, very long night for him and a very, very long night for this Michigan offense. And then finally, the last key I want to throw in there from Michigan, just a quick little tidbit there, is the fact that Michigan has not forced a turnover since their win over Minnesota. They forced 0 turnovers against Michigan State. They forced 0 turnovers against Indiana last week. Michigan has got to find a way to force Wisconsin into some mistakes. Maybe MERTZ coughs it up. Maybe your pass rush gets to him. You force a fumble. I don't know what it's going to be, but Michigan's got to get at least 1 turnover. Get back on the board and start working on that turnover margin. Start working on that turnover margin because, like I said, their defense has been almost non-existent all year long, and obviously the takeaways haven't been there either. So Michigan's got to find a way to do that if they want to be able to win this game at home. So what is our final analysis for this game? A lot of talk for a game that, like I said, almost didn't even happen and still could be up in the air in the coming days. But for right now, we believe it will happen. Our final analysis is this. Yesterday in our weekly predictions video, where we predict the top 5 games of each week, we picked Michigan to win this game. We picked Michigan to win this game, but we had a little asterisk by there because we said the game might not be played, and we said we want to wait and see the status of some key Wisconsin players. And by key players, we meant Graham Mertz. Right now, it appears that he is going to play. At least Paul Chryst indicates that he probably will play on Saturday. So right now, I am going with Wisconsin to win this game on the road. You factor in the fact that Mertz should be back. You factor in that AIDAN Hutchinson is not going to be on defense. A captain for this Michigan football team is not going to be along that defensive line trying to create pressure on whoever's under center for Wisconsin. You factor in the fact that Michigan's so beat up, so many injuries. Maybe they're not season-ending injuries. Maybe they're not even week-long injuries. Maybe they're going to play. A lot of these players aren't going to be a full 100%, and that's a problem when you're facing a team as physical and as tough and hard-nosed as Wisconsin. So I think the Badgers do come out rusty in this game. I think our key for them was to come out hot. I don't think they do it. I think they need to, but I don't think they do. They come out rusty. It's been over 3 weeks. It's bound to happen. You've got to get your footing. But they will pick it up. After the first quarter, this Wisconsin team will begin to roll. Michigan keeps it close for a while, but Wisconsin goes in there. They escape with the win, at least by 7 points. Very well could be more. And the Badgers get their first win in Ann Arbor since 2010. And the Badgers will be back on track to hopefully go on and win the Big Ten championship game, win the Big Ten West and set up a Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, one that could have major playoff implications by the time it is all said and done. So guys, thank you for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. Make sure to share our videos, guys. That's how we continue to grow. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below. If you love college football, again, this is the place for you. Not only the content we post here, but all of the offers and exclusive content we have down in the description. That BetNow link we mentioned, that's down there. Go hit that. Go sign up. Go sign up for our expert picks, for our against the spread picks for games like this. We're 61.5% over the past 4 weeks. Can't do much better than that. We're loving it. We're hot right now. So sign up for the expert picks. Sign up for the newsletter. Sign up for the Patreon. Check out everything down in that description below. If you're a college football fan, I can promise you, you're not going to regret it. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.